Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have ABC News Chief Washington Correspondent and author Jonathan Karl back with us today. We'll chat with Jonathan in just a few moments. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Jonathan Karl is the Chief Washington Correspondent for ABC News and co-anchor of This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He's covered every major beat in Washington, D.C., including the White House, Capitol Hill, the Pentagon, and the State Department. He's reported from the White House under 4 presidents and 14 press secretaries, and is a former president of the White House Correspondents Association. He is the author of the New York Times instant bestsellers Front Row at the Trump Show, Betrayal, and Tired of Winning. And he's back with us in the back room to discuss his latest book, Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign That Changed America. Jonathan, welcome back into the back room.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
So I want to get into your book in just a second, but first, we obviously had a major event this week with the elections. Give me a couple of minutes of your biggest takeaways.
Look, this was a major warning shot for Republicans. Look, on one hand, the spin, look, these were 2 Democratic states that Trump lost, Virginia and New Jersey, obviously New York City, and obviously the Prop 50 in California, all kind of played on a weight game territory for Republicans. But I mean, come on, this was double-digit victories for the Democrats in Virginia and New Jersey. This was county by county by county, demographic group by demographic group, Democrats outperforming what they did 4 years ago in a way that was not just the percentage, not the margin of victory, but the turnout. I mean, to me, one of the biggest takeaways here was how much the turnout was up. Obviously, New York City, the highest turnout since 1969. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that doesn't matter much because New York City is New York City, but the turnout was significantly higher in New Jersey and in Virginia. This shows to me that Democrats didn't just win, but they are more energized. And that energy, I mean, we're a long way from the midterms, but that energy is going to carry over as they get into the midterms.
Yeah, and it was huge to see young men and Latinos just say bye-bye to Trump and Republicans.
Yeah. I thought, by the way, New Jersey is maybe the most significant because you remember Trump gained significant ground in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. It was where he improved his performance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you know, New Jersey, you had people that were upset because of high property taxes, high electricity bills. That could just as easily have cut against the Democrats. The Democrats, you know, now elected a Democratic, governor for the 3rd time. That's something that doesn't usually happen in New Jersey, 3rd consecutive election. Phil Murphy's in charge in the state. But it was clear that voters were blaming Trump. We're blaming Trump for what they saw.
Yeah. And to the point about dismissing this as just victories in blue states, I mean, the Democrats killed a supermajority in Mississippi, and they flipped 2 seats on that Georgia Electric Commission. And so the first time in 30 years, there's going to be a Democrat on the commission. So it wasn't about just blue states, but you know.
No. And even in those blue states, you can't just chalk it up to being blue states.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the astounding things about Trump's victory in 2024 was how he improved his margin in, you know, some of the bluest parts of the country. Mm-hmm. That was completely gone on Tuesday.
How do you think this impacts the shutdown and the leverage that either side thinks they have and may have?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it, you know, the kind of conventional wisdom is this kind of gives Democrats more energy and less incentive to make a deal. I don't know. That could be overplayed a little bit. My sense is the bigger factor is what's happening at airports around the country and what's happening. The confusion with SNAP. You know, people are starting to really feel the impact of this shutdown. There's a much bigger incentive to get something done. My sense is that we're probably going to see a resolution to this by next week.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hope so. All right, let's talk about the book. It's called Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign That Changed America. It's a terrific, fast read. I highly recommend it. You had me right from the start of the book when you describe your call to Donald Trump the morning after he won the election last year. Tell us about that fascinating moment and what it says about the man and what it may have foreshadowed for you about Trump 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, one of the strangest things about it is that I called Trump early in the morning. It was like about 7:30 in the morning after the election, and that he actually answered the phone, which I was not expecting. I had been calling him pretty regularly over the course of the campaign. And by the way, I've known Trump since 1994. I covered the entirety of his first administration, his first campaign, all of that. Calling him on his cell phone was not something I used to do. This is a recent development. If I really needed to get through to him, I would call somebody on his staff, and and he would get back to me or not. But after Butler was the first call when the assassination attempt in Butler happened. After that, I called just to leave him a message to say I was horrified by what happened and glad he was okay. But, look, Trump and I have had a long and pretty contentious relationship. He has said you could look them up. He has said some really horrific things about me over the years. I've never really let that bother me. I just do my job. And he's also said good things about me. So whatever, I don't really care. But given that all that had happened and given that he had just won this victory, I figured I would call him on election morning. I hadn't slept all night, by the way. We were doing our ABC, tracking the returns, then into Good Morning America. I had not slept at all. And I know, God knows, I don't think he slept either. I called just to say congratulations. And he answered. And I just said, Mr. President-elect, I'm just calling to say congratulations. Boom. And he says, on what? On what, Jonathan? You tell me. And I laughed at first because I thought he was being funny, but he was not being funny. He was being dead serious. It was like, I write in the book, it was like Walter White. It was like Bryan Cranston's character in Breaking Bad when he has that meeting in the desert with his vanquished, enemies, and he tells them, "Say my name."
Right.
He wanted to hear me say that he had won and what a great victory it was. And I told him, and look, and it was the greatest comeback victory in the history of American politics. I don't care what you think of him, if you think it's the end of the world that he got elected or you voted for him. You have to say that a guy that left the White House, a pariah, in disgrace, impeached, a guy that was indicted 4 times, a guy that was convicted of a felony in New York, a guy who had been banned from Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, a guy who corporations had forsworn ever donating money to again or anybody associated with him, a guy whose own cabinet from the first term, many of them walked away and never looked back, that guy ends up coming back and winning the presidency is mind-blowing.
And the popular vote as a Republican candidate for the first time in how long?
Yeah, look, I mean, it wasn't the biggest victory in the world. Like if you listen to him, I mean, Obama won by a bigger margin. Obviously, Reagan did, Bush in '88. But look, it was the first Republican to win the popular vote in 2 decades. And the battle was being waged in 7 battleground states. The bizarre way we run presidential elections now, or we campaign in them. And he won all 7 of them. So, I mean, it was a big victory, no matter how you slice it.
So when he says about what, Jonathan, you're thinking, how do I answer
You can hear,
this?
I laugh. I mean, I'm laughing. And then I'm like, oh no, he wants me to say it. It's kind of like if I called you and you had just won, whatever, something big, whatever. You just won an Oscar or something. I'd say, congratulations, and you said about what? Like, about that sandwich you had yesterday. I mean, of course we know what it is, but he wasn't joking.
But, it's interesting when you think about his cabinet meetings and how everyone has to go around the room praising him. It's like, it sort of speaks to that Donald Trump that he would say to you about what? Because he so needed to hear, like, winning, based on everything you just said about how unlikely it was that he was going to win a second term, he still was suffering from crippling insecurities to the point where he needed you to tell him how amazing it was. That to me is just astounding.
Yeah. Why would he give a damn? I mean, or I'll give you another one. It's like when he won the first time. He gets elected president when nobody in the world, not even like him, nobody thought he was going to win. He gets elected. He gives his inaugural address, and he notices that somebody on like MSNBC or something is saying, well, there wasn't much of a crowd at this inauguration. And he spends the next days like fuming about how people aren't giving him credit for having a big enough crowd at his inauguration. Why do you care? You're the president of the United States.
Well, there's a question I want to ask you about that, because there's only been 47 U.S. presidents, and he's been elected twice. So he's in a very elite group, accomplished something that hardly anyone in our 250-year history has accomplished. He's the most powerful human on earth. He's escaped prosecution in all the cases that were open as of Inauguration Day, as you said. He's a billionaire who lives better than virtually everyone else on the planet. So why is he so angry and hell-bent on this retribution campaign and literally destroying his perceived enemies?
It's a core to who he is. He thinks he's perpetually had the chip on his shoulder of somebody who doesn't get the credit he deserves. I can't tell you how many times over the course of my interactions with him, I hope you'll give me the credit. You give me the credit. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Give me the credit. This goes back to his days in New York when, a lot of the, the real big money people in New York didn't take him all that seriously. He was the guy, that couldn't make the casinos profitable. And he was a guy that insisted on having his name on everything. So he wasn't like, so he's had this sense, he would argue. I mean, think about it. The Forbes list was like an obsession with him. He wanted to be on the Forbes list of the richest people, and he would fight with them, threaten to sue them over not being high enough on the Forbes list and saying they were underestimating his income. So I think that's been a kind of a core tenet of Trump all along. But it is absolutely astounding that it continues even when he has reached the pinnacle of power that he's released. And you made another very important point. He is not just elected president again, but first of all, he is richer than he has ever been. I mean, people used to say, he's a fake billionaire. This dude's a billionaire now.
Not anymore.
And he is more powerful than he has ever been. And he is more powerful, I would argue, than any president that we have had in our lifetime. Because he's got the Supreme Court has ratified this whole idea of presidential immunity, which had never really been there. So he can kind of do whatever he wants, remotely tied to his official duties. But it's more than that. For the first time in our lifetimes, we have a president that has complete and total command over his political party. Mm-hmm. There is no dissent. I mean, what? Rand Paul doesn't like what he's doing in Venezuela, and Massey does, will defy him on it. But essentially, they are all there to ratify what he wants to do. Bush always had dissent in his party. Obama had to deal. Think about what all Obama went through with the pro-life Democrats on Obamacare and other issues. There are always, pockets of resistance. Even, this is before our lifetimes, but, FDR had massive Democratic majorities, but had Southern Democrats who weren't on board with the New Deal that he had to fight with. Trump has, carte blanche to do what he wants from his own party.
It just is astounding that he just doesn't seem like he could ever be happy. Like, it's, the stuff that psychiatrists will study for hundreds and hundreds of years, but it's, the whole point of your book is how even with everything that he has that we've been speaking about, and given the shutdown, given everything that's happening in this world and in this country, inflation is rising, unemployment is rising. Americans clearly said on Tuesday, we are not happy. Given all of that, do you think his number one priority is retribution?
I think it cuts through everything that he does. It's not the only priority at times. His quest now to be seen as the greatest president ever, is part of it. But he wants to, first of all, get revenge on those who he believes have hurt him or tried to hurt him. And he wants to prove the people who doubted him and second-guessed him wrong. That's all part of the Retribution campaign. It cuts through really just about everything that he does. And you can see it through, just the events of the last few weeks, the way he personally, despite what he says, it's obvious, pushed the indictments of Tish James and James Comey amidst all that's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And by the way, amidst some of his successes, the ceasefire and the hostage release in the Middle East, you think he'd want to bask in that for a few minutes. But even as that's happening, he's charting, how do we get back at these people who did to me what they did?
Yeah. And yesterday, astoundingly, he said, I don't want to hear about the affordability. If you're a Trump voter and you're trying to buy groceries and you have real kitchen table issues, what are you supposed to make of that? I don't want to hear about the affordability. Everything's coming down.
He's also believed that he can create his own reality. There was a quote from a speech that he gave in his first term to the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW. You got to go back and look at this one. I forget which year it was, but it was a speech of the VFW where he effectively says, who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? Effectively says, just believe what I say, not what you see. And he's always believed that he can create a reality. Truth is secondary to how he speaks. And it can be really trivial stuff that he'll, just say and say and say over and over and over again and get people to believe. And frankly, he has said stuff that's completely untrue over and over again. And he has succeeded in getting
absolutely
nearly half the country to believe him. Whether it be about the election, or whatever. But you know what? When you tell people that grocery prices have gone down and they still have to go to the store and pay for the food they're going to put on the table, the reality actually matters there. It's not just words. So I don't know how this is going to work.
I was going to say
prices haven't come down.
I was going to say it doesn't really work as well when you say, who are you going to believe, me or your lying grocery bill?
Yeah.
So there are so many great stories in the book about Trump, about Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Mike Pence, Steve Bannon, RFK Jr., Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth, Usha Vance, and others. Share with us a couple of your favorites.
Well, the Usha Vance story, since you just mentioned that, is kind of an interesting one. I'll give you a little sense of how it was received too from the administration. So in Trump's first term, the White House counsel, and in every other presidency I've ever covered, White House counsel is a very important role. Reviews every major document that comes in and out of the Oval Office, ensures that everything is comporting with the law. It's kind of like the internal, cop. Just making sure we got everything, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. We're operating within our legitimate authority, et cetera, et cetera. So in the first term, Don McGahn was the White House counsel for the first part, and Pat Cipollone in the second part. And Trump grew to be resentful of both, because even though they were both loyal Trump people, for sure, they would say when he couldn't do something. Like they counseled against him. McGahn counseled against him firing the special counsel. Pat Cipollone counseled him against the idea that Pence could overturn the presidential election, and many, 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 many other examples. So the White House counsel in this administration, this is such an indication of it, is like an afterthought. They're there to help him do things, not tell him what he can and can't do. So when they were negotiating, when they had put together this major agreement with Ukraine, big priority for the national security team, the idea that Ukraine would share its natural resources, its rare earth minerals, and all of that with the United States as a way to repay the United States for all that we had given for Ukraine's defense against Russia. And it's Thursday, it's in February, it's the day before that famously contentious meeting with Zelensky and Trump, and they're just finalizing the agreement that is supposed to be signed the next day. And somebody in this meeting, and they're all there, it's J.D. Vance is there, and Hegseth, and Rubio, and Walz, and they're all the best, all the major players are there. And somebody asked, wait a minute, has this gone through legal review with the White House counsel? And it hadn't. They hadn't even showed it to the guy, whose name, by the way, is Dave Warrington. He was the counsel for the Trump campaign, and they hadn't even shown it to him. They hadn't even given it to him. So Vance suggests, you know what? Why don't we have Usha take a look at it? His wife, the second lady, and she did. Now, by the way, Usha Vance is a very accomplished lawyer, Yale Law School graduate. So but she's not on the National Security Council. She's got no formal role. And a lot of people looked at that and said, oh my God, what a shit show. But I think that the view from the vice president's office was that just shows how great and thoughtful and intelligent and how much of a role that Usha Vance has, in helping her husband out, helping the vice president out.
Yeah. And there was a similar story where in the middle of a similar meeting, I think it was with the national security team, Trump's like, let's get Steve Bannon on the phone and ask him what he thinks.
Yeah. So what this shows is the people that have the titles don't mean a damn thing to Trump. Never have, actually. And part of that is part of that can be okay, actually. It kind of gives you a chance to bring in some outside influences. But in this case, it's Steve Bannon, who's literally on the wall. He's doing his War Room podcast. He's on the air doing his show, and Trump is with the whole night. This is the same week. It's the Monday before Zelensky comes in, and they're talking about this deal with Ukraine, and Trump doesn't like what he's hearing. He wants more money and less of a commitment to Ukraine. He just wants to get Ukraine to pay back all the stuff that Biden had provided for the defense against the Russian invasion. And Bannon ends up on the phone on Trump's iPhone. Trump calls him on his phone and puts it on speakerphone, puts it on the desk. They're in that, so it's in the West Wing. They're not in the Oval Office. They're in that dining room right next to the Oval Office where Trump spends a lot of his time and has the TV screens and whatnot. And they're all there crowded in. And Bannon, for the next half hour, is basically lecturing the national security team about how they can't trust, quote, that punk Zelensky. And, and he's urging them not to do the deal. And then the meeting happens at the end of the week and it blows up. The deal is not signed. And Bannon very much helped set the tone, a tone that Trump wanted, let's be clear. But Bannon really helped set the tone for that meeting. And he's not on the National Security Council any more than Usha Vance is.
So is that what he does? When he needs affirmation about something and he's not getting it in the room, he picks up the phone and calls either Laura Loomer or Bannon or a pillow guy or God knows who else. And he gets what he wants to hear. And
there's certainly element of that. And he'll listen to everybody. I remember something in the first term where they were in down in the Situation Room in this case, and they were getting, briefed on a national security matter. And, there's always a note taker that's a career person, sometimes it's military, who's around for these things. And the note taker is sitting there just to take the notes. And Trump asks her, what do you think? And she answered, oh, no, I'm just here to take notes. He's like, no, I want to know, what do you think? I mean, he'll take inputs from everybody. And he's going to listen to what he wants to listen to. I mean, look, some people say he does whatever the last person he talked to. I do not think that is true, actually. I think Trump goes by his own gut, and he goes, it's more what you said. He goes around until he hears what he wants to hear.
Right. Another thing in the book that I found really interesting is the performative aspect of a lot of his bluster. And using you as an example, how you had a blowout with him, or he had a blowout with you. And then like when it was over in the Oval Office, he's like, "Hey, we're good." Like it was a performance. And are we supposed to assume that a lot of what we see when he's, angry Trump, that it's just good television, as he said after that Ukraine disaster?
A lot of it is for television, but it has a real effect.
To some people, for sure.
Yeah. That Ukraine meeting with Zelensky created a real crisis, and totally freaked out the Europeans. And by the way, has had an impact on every other meeting that he has had with a foreign leader since.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody wants to be Zelensky.
Right.
Including Zelensky. Nobody wants to be the Zelensky of that February meeting. And
even when he attacks someone like you or other reporters or other people, it may be performance, but like the next day you could be getting death threats or hate mail.
Oh, the next minute.
The next minute. So it does have an effect. I'm just more wondering, like, because he lacks real core foreign policy or any core philosophies, and does act on impulse and to get credit and to get people to like him. It just makes
be the center of attention.
Yeah, is it just all in service to that stuff, despite the fact that it does have real life implications to people?
I mean, I think that there's a little bit more going on in the second term. My very first book I wrote while he was still president was Front Row at the Trump Show, describing the Trump presidency as, in his view, the world's greatest reality TV show. He was programming it, he was starring in it, he was producing it, he was the publicist, he was everything. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't really a strategy of what they wanted to actually do. I mean, there were a couple of big picture things, the wall and whatnot, but it was about keeping frenetic pace that always kept the world's attention and never got people bored. Mm-hmm. But there's something more going on now. I mean, he is, and maybe it's Trump kind of realizing his own mortality, which I've never thought is something that he ever really considered, but maybe post Butler, that's something that he thinks about, maybe just the age that he is. He's trying to make a lasting impact and he's making a pitch, for history, which he never cared about before. I mean, now you go into the Oval Office, you don't just see the gold. The gold is hard to miss. But all those portraits of the presidents, much more than he had before. I mean, there was like an Andrew Jackson before. There was, Lincoln, but now he's got, and in the colonnade where he put all the presidents in the row, he is very much obsessed now with where he stands in that ranking order. So he doesn't have another campaign to run, but he has the campaign to be, the best president since Washington, which he says he already is, but he wants the world
Still
to
searching.
affirm that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why the obsession with the Nobel Peace Prize.
Sure.
These were not things that obsessed him in the first term.
Yeah. I have this theory about Trump that at his core, he's not consciously trying to be the dictator in the historical political sense that people fear, but rather he's just being the same old Donald Trump he's been his whole life, which for all intents and purposes is just as authoritarian and oppressive. You've known him, as you said before, you've covered him for 30 years. You have a great context from which to view and judge him. What do you think?
So the core of your question is whether he's basically the same guy. It's like the same.
He just has more opportunity, more power, and more sycophants around him. Like, are we seeing the same Donald Trump except with greater consequences?
I think in large part we are. He thought that he could, he's always thought he could break the rules. The rules don't apply to him. Look at the way he would treat contractors, just not pay the bills and wait for people to sue and get a deal to pay pennies on the dollar. That was kind of, his operating mode. And also the attention's always got to be on me, and I can create my own reality. He builds Trump Tower. It has, I think it's 66. The top floor is 66, I believe. I may be wrong, 68, something like that. But it actually has 55 stories because he skips Yeah, he skips 10. That's what he does because he go from 5 to 14.
Right.
And to make it look like it was the biggest building in that part of Manhattan because it had more, because the top floor was bigger number, but it's not.
Right.
But he always thought he could create his own reality.
After 9/11, he was proud that his building is now the tallest building in the city. I mean,
yeah, that's just
the chaos, the corruption, the cruelty. In your opinion, is he just the same guy? That's what it feels like.
I think that he has largely been the same guy. I think that the difference now is this play for history, because I don't think that was always this. You might think because he wants his name and everything, he wants the legacy. No, but he was always in the moment, and he still very much is in the moment. He's not strategic. He's not thinking 10 moves ahead. He's letting his gut decide which direction he's going to go, but he's got an eye on his place in history now that I don't think he ever had before. And how that plays, maybe that'll be a saving grace, or maybe that'll be more dangerous.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you summarize it that way, because on the tombstone of it all, does he really want, here lies the dictator who destroyed American democracy?
Yeah, and I write directly at the end of the book, and some people will take issue with this, but that's fine. I don't think that he actually wants to be the great dictator. I don't think he wants all the responsibility and everything else that goes along with that.
Agree.
I think he likes to play a dictator on TV, but I think that he has provided a roadmap for somebody to actually become a fascist leader in this country. I mean, he has shown that you can basically bypass Congress, that you can rule in large part by executive dictate. He has shown that you can break rules, and who can really enforce them when you are the chief executive. He's largely abided by court rulings. I mean, with the exception of the Boasberg ruling on the planes to El Salvador, which was a real last minute kind of thing. But he has stepped up to a complete lawlessness, but not gone over. I think there are people around him who would go over that line, and he has shown that if you do go over that line, God only knows what happens. I mean, to me, the indicator of that at the end of the first term was what he was demanding of Mike Pence.
Right.
And if Pence had no constitutional authority to do what Trump was asking him to do, but if he had attempted it, it is not clear who had the power and the authority to stop him. It would have truly led to a constitutional crisis in this country.
Well, they had the fake electors already lined up, so interesting hypothesis. Jonathan, the book again is called Retribution, Donald Trump and the Campaign That Changed America. It is so good. I highly recommend everyone get themselves a copy. Continue good luck and success with the book.
Great to talk to you again, Andy, and hope to see you again soon.
All righty, take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langale. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.